special episode. Typically, we talk about older films, and today we're talking about a movie that is quite literally in theaters, and that movie is The Iron Claw, directed by Sean Durkin. And we've got two great guests today. The first one is Justin. You might know him from Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever it is. One of the greatest voices we have out there. Got nothing but love for Justin. Say what's up, man.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the love. Thank you for inviting me. And, it's a good opportunity to meet people on TikTok and meet people on social media, talk about things that we love. So it's really cool, man.
Yeah, I know. The entire point of making this podcast is exactly that, and I'm excited for this conversation today.
Nice.
And our second guest is someone I've known for 10 plus years, practically my brother. We go back to riding the bus, listening to Disney Channel songs, and everything in between.
Yep.
The biggest WWE fan, biggest wrestling fan I know, pretty much besides my cousin. He'll kill me if I don't say that. Will, what's up?
What's up, man? How y'all doing?
Doing good, man.
Yeah, it's been, what,
Okay.
you said 10 plus years? Yeah, middle school.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Damn.
10 plus. It might be closer to 15. It might be 15.
Brothers,
But
bro.
I wanted to start with some real. But I wanted to start with you, Justin. What sparked the love for this movie? Why did you? We talked about doing another film, Rush Hour, which we will be doing.
Yes,
But
dude.
you
wait.
messaged me wanting to talk about this movie. What started that sort of spark for you for this movie?
I have to say, I feel like it was just the themes, man. Just like in the culture at the time. Like when you look at like wrestling, like there's a dark side to wrestling that no one really talks about, like the drugs, the party life, and like the stardom. Like no one really talks about that. But it's just kind of interesting to kind of see like the curtains be pulled and like to just to see what they were doing back then at that time and just to see who they really were behind the scenes. So I think I feel like anything that has something to do with just like looking at someone's personal life and like how it's impacted or just seeing the dark side or the truth, I feel like those are stories that gravitate towards me. So I feel like Iron Claw definitely, it really does, it's touchy, man. It's really touchy. So it's tough to really look at that family like that. But I mean, it's just, it's part of the history of Dallas and everything, man. It was a big, big moment in history.
So, are you from Dallas?
So yes, I'm from Dallas, man. But it's funny, like
Okay.
I was never really that big into wrestling. I was real big in like football, track and field, like the Olympics. So I never really got into, wrestling until The Rock or it was like, John Cena. Those are like big names that I knew. But looking at like all the older guys like the Ric Flairs and stuff like that, like you see like these guys were like wild boys, man. Like they were not like if they were living in the business right now, like they wouldn't be able to do half the stuff they were doing. So it's kind of crazy to just see like what that lifestyle was like.
No, that's great. And I think for all of the stuff that they have in this movie, it's got a lot of that party stuff in there, but they're pretty honest with the family stuff, I think.
Oh, for sure.
And like it's more honest towards what the family was going through than it might be with all the drugs and all the partying and stuff like that. But Will, what is your background when it comes to wrestling?
Well, background, I've watched it all my life from WWF, WCW to WWE. TNA wrestling, then they changed to Impact Wrestling. Now I watch All Elite Wrestling. I watch everything, New Japan, Ring of Honor, etc. But the Von Erichs are one of the greatest wrestling trees of all time. One of the best families. Today you got like the Usos, Roman Reigns, and that group that are related to The Rock. But no, the Von Erichs, one of the best of all time. Hall of Fame, WWE Hall of Fame, back in, I want to say 2009 when they got inducted. But this movie dives into their lives and showed how much they love the business, but also love their family and everything. We watch wrestling, like us fans, we watch it because escape from reality. The plot, the action, the storytelling, and everything.
It's
like
hilarious.
That's what we love. And it's an art. People think it's fake and everything. It's like it's scripted, but it's an art to us. Like we love it
Performance.
so much. Yes, the performance. And I love how to see the life outside of wrestling, like what's really going on. Because I mean, today you do have the reality shows like Miz and Mrs. with Mike Mizanin. Big fan of the Miz. You got Total Divas that used to go on, Total Bellas. Then you got all these documentaries, but this movie does a great job of telling this story.
And I'm glad this movie was made because it feels like it's a bridge between, movies and the wrestling itself. And WWE and everybody, they've made movies, but not an art movie like this.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to wrestling, it's something where it's live theater on just a bigger scale. Just for some perspective, Justin, me and Will, we just went to Raw in June.
Nice.
When I say I saw every single color in the book when it comes to people, backgrounds, and everyone was there,
big.
And the electricity in that arena was just something else. And watching this movie just reminded me of that. And I'm like, the artistry cannot be undertaken, underrated, underseen, because this is so much work. And what these people do is nothing short of just hardcore vibes. Like, if this movie, it reminds me of like movies like Creed, where I'm like, damn, I gotta work out more.
Nah, dude, it makes you want to get in the ring, man. It makes you want to get in the ring. Rocky, Creed.
The Vice documentary I was telling you about, I watched it again today. And after I watched it, I was working, thinking, I was like, damn, I gotta do better in my life. That's what I felt like.
Dude, that's funny.
Well, mentioning wanting to get back in the or go in the ring, that was part of the reasons why in high school I was a wrestler.
Nice.
So,
yeah. He was on the wrestling team. He put in the work.
I did. I wasn't very good, but I enjoyed it a lot.
That's cool, man.
So the movie is out in theaters. We, all three of us, highly recommend you go see the movie in the theater. And we're gonna go full into spoilers. Me, I didn't even know the story of the Von Erichs till I saw the film, and I highly recommend that you go and see it because it'll break you in half and build you right back up. It's fantastic. So when it gets to the themes, what's the first theme that just comes to you? The theme wise, what comes to you first?
Theme wise. Like, I feel like the film always mentions generational curses, and that's something that I could really relate to. You have family members that try and push there's legacy, and then there's also just like family members that want to live or parents that want to live their legacies through their children. And that's something that I can relate to, like, because obviously my parents, like, very strict growing up and everything, but, very serious. But, they pushed me because they wanted me to be the best. They wanted me to be a good student. They wanted me to be a good person. So I can kind of relate to that. And just having to be just, a model citizen around people in the community and stuff like that, that's something that, the Von Erichs had to go through from like a much larger scale. So it's definitely in terms of just like the celebrity, just like going through that, like I'm sure that was a lot of pressure. And that's why a lot of like wrestlers, a lot of these guys get into the drugs. A lot of these guys are doing steroids. They're training like crazy. They're doing like hella shows. I mean, who knows how many shows they're doing at a time? Like I don't know, hundreds, maybe hundreds a year. So like the training, like they're overworked.
Oh, yeah.
Like they can't deal with, the people coming up to them and just they're literally small town celebrities, and like they made it on the biggest scale in wrestling. So it was kind of crazy to, see that, the father's pressure. It made them successful, and it made them basically what was like the Jackson 5 of wrestling. But it also, there were some things that kind of held them back personally. Like you could be wealthy, you could be successful, but there's still, there's pressures that are going to take you back as just a person. And I think the idea of like generational curses, like living through your children, like that's something that I personally relate to just because it's just like family, man. Like people want to have the ideal family. They want to look like the poster childs of the business. And that's what the Von Erichs were. And, I didn't even know that until recently because like, I didn't grow up in that era of wrestling. Like we didn't learn about like the history of wrestling until recently, but like they were big. I didn't know they were the Jackson. Like that was the first thing that came to mind, like the Jackson 5, because the father, he has all these brothers just like working like crazy. And like immediately I was thinking like, that's Joe Jackson. Like the dad is Joe Jackson, and like Kevin is Michael, and like the whole family is just like all over the place. And like they're not used to doing that. They just want to, enjoy life. They just want to be together as brothers, as family. And it was tough, man. Like seeing like multiple tragic deaths. Like it's like it makes you. Yeah, it makes you like it makes you feel bad for, Kevin, because he was the only one that survived, and he had to watch his brothers go.
And we'll get into Kevin in real life and all that soon. But when it comes to what you're talking about, I think the interesting thing about the brothers themselves was that they all say, or at least Kevin says it, is that they all love their father still. It wasn't, you know what happened with Joe Jackson, but like this
Yeah.
was something where they still loved their father, and Kevin was even there till Fritz's end, and Fritz was literally, pointing a gun at Kevin in real life
Mhm.
when he's like a cancer patient. He's,
Jesus.
gone off the rails. But it's like, even though he did all these bad things, and apparently Fritz came from like a very bad background himself too,
Yeah.
that they still love their dad. And it's something where it's like, even though your family dynamic might be crazy, it might be bad, they still have this respect for, number one, they had respect for their father.
Mm.
And number two, they were always chasing his approval.
Yeah. Competing too.
It's an interesting thing. It's like for us, like you said, when it comes to tradition, when it comes to your family, you're always trying to live up to something. When you in Into the Spider-Verse, Miles is trying to live up to this expectation that his dad has. It's something that I think we all three of us can very much relate to. And what you do within the parameters of trying to live up to those expectations, you can become, the biggest name in wrestling.
Yeah.
But at what cost does fame and power come to you?
Yeah.
And Kevin says it is like, the only reason I didn't go off the rails was because I had a family, right? And like you said, family matters, and it always will matter.
Absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback up on what you said, like I think the only reason why Kevin is alive is because he chose himself. Like he chose himself over the business. He chose his wife over the business. And like I'm not saying the brothers they didn't choose themselves or anything. They didn't care about themselves, but like they kind of succumbed to like the vices of the business. And that's what kind of ended, yeah, kind of led to their demise. So it's tough seeing that, but yeah, it happens all the time. Like celebrity, like any type of celebrity, bro, like it's not a normal thing to be a celebrity. It's not a normal thing to have cameras on you 24/7. Like that's not a normal life. Like us as regular people, we live normal lives. We don't have like people around us all the time. So it's like I'm sure it's stressful. Like there's a lot of anxiety, and that's what leads into the drugs. That's what leads into whatever it is. Like so it's tough, man.
Yeah, and they're emotionally honest with all that sort of stuff, that the reason why it seems like what they're doing all that stuff just to, essentially get up on the rank in their family.
Absolutely.
In their dad's vision, which is like, it is like a very toxic masculinity thing.
For sure.
So when it comes to like the story themselves of the Von Erichs, did you have anything where it's like, we see this in the film, the story, and when it comes to real life, is there any difference between what we're seeing on screen and then in real life? Because Zac Efron, he was talking in an interview, he was like, we did the best, like the story itself does the best it can on film, but they didn't capture the full grasp of the grief and the pain and the highs that the Von Erichs had as a wrestling family.
So I will say this, one of the biggest thing is they did not mention one of the brothers, Chris, who was one of the
It's a young one.
Chris was one of the ones that killed himself. But in the documentary, shout out to Vice for that documentary. Great documentary if you haven't watched it yet. He went and killed himself, left a letter and everything. It's very, very sad, tragic. But I mean, I get why they didn't put him in the film, because of the fact that there was so much death already in the film.
It would have been repetitive.
Yeah, it would have been. So I think that's one of the big things. I mean, I would have liked it, but at the same time, I get the director's point and I get why they didn't do that. I think they did a great job overall showing the emotion, but still, it's not going to come close to the real thing, obviously. And if you watch the documentary, they actually show like one of the funerals that there were people lined up outside and they had to have speakers and stuff for the funeral so everybody could hear, because it was such a big impact on
crazy.
the whole
Yeah,
community.
for David's funeral.
Yeah, for the whole community, not only for the family, but the whole wrestling community, the community that he lived in, etc. The wrestling world. It was big, big time.
And I think when it comes to everything that they show, I think they did it extremely well on all ends. I didn't realize that wrestling was going to be that good in the movie. I thought it looked really, really good.
They had some good stunt choreographers.
All the fights, and apparently they ran all the fights. They would just run the entire fight. If you mess up in the first minute, you still choreograph. You do the rest of the 10-minute fight, and then cut, and then do it again.
Dang.
And it was pretty intense.
That's legit, bro. Shout out to Durkin, Sean Durkin, man.
And Durkin, he just a little perspective. I listened to his DGA conversation, and he was talking about how he was a fan growing up. He's an actual fan since he was a kid, and for him, it's good to have a fan in in that corner, or else this story would have never been made, because he's been trying to make this movie for like 7 years, and they finally made it. And this story is worth telling and having on the big screen. It's tragedy, but I think it's capturing something about America, especially about Texas, that I don't think you really see too much in film. I have this complaint where like we don't have enough American movies that just like they're just plain American.
Yeah.
And recently we haven't had too many, and this is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different culture, man. Like Texas, like very rich culture. Like there's different regions. You have Houston, which is very diverse. Like Dallas, it's very different from Houston too. So like it really puts it into perspective. Like when you see stuff like this happen, like I never thought that like it would be this big. Like I never thought the family were even nearly as big as they were. So it's kind of crazy that they pretty much became like stars and Hall of Famers, which is, I mean, Dallas, we don't have a lot of stars, which is pretty crazy. Like when you look at it, like when you think of singers or like famous celebrities from Dallas, there's very few. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool that you get a look into that history.
And it's like when it comes to that fame, just because you don't have too many people there, if someone in that town is famous, they're even like that fame that they have feels even more exponential. And they went from going on the road hardcore, chasing that fame, and it came right back home to them in a sportatorium, getting on ESPN and all that on TV. And it's like, it really was them chasing that greatness that got them into this, it's like you might get to the high, and then that's when the devil comes for you, right?
Yeah,
that's
dude.
when you start to feel alone, and those feelings in your mind that you're not enough and all those sorts of things. They depict it extremely well in this movie, where they show all the highs, but when it comes to the lows, when they're alone, we get to see those too. Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like they depict masculinity in a great way, where it's like you got the fun stuff, but when it comes to all the hiding your emotions, not crying at your brother's funeral,
yeah,
and not dealing with those,
putting the glasses on,
not dealing with those debts. Yeah. The moment where Lily Evans' character, she like looks over at her brothers, and they're not, or at the two brothers, and they're not even crying at the funeral, at Carrie's funeral. That got to me. I was like, damn. I was like, I don't know. I'd be crying. I'd be crying.
I'm weeping, man. I'm weeping. I'm on the floor. I'm sorry. It's just how it is, man. Like,
yo, did y'all cry during the movie? Because I did.
Nah, I wouldn't say I cried, but like it definitely hit me, man. It's like, dang, like, yeah, it hits you emotionally. Man.
Well, here's the thing about that though, but since I already knew the background of the story, I know this sounds terrible. You try not to get attached to the characters right away, like
Yeah.
I love the characters, but I knew what was going to happen, so
Yeah.
it's like I'm already there. It was very sad and emotional, but I wasn't shedding a tear or anything, and stuff. If you think about it though, because we talked about how emotional like people get, if you look about within the past couple years, Brody Lee, which y'all probably don't know, Bray Wyatt, recently passed away, and they were former wrestlers, and the impact that it made throughout the whole wrestling community as well. So I mean, it still impacts today, and people were boohoo crying and everything.
And I think it's like it's not when like let's say you watch a movie, right? Like I love Denzel, but I wouldn't say Denzel. You have to say like a Jake Gyllenhaal. If you know this is a very negative conversation. I might cut this out, but just for us. So if Jake Gyllenhaal passed away, I'm not gonna feel boohoo crying.
Yeah.
But if someone I knew on TV, like Bryan Cranston, I watched 60 hours of this guy acting.
Yeah, because you're invested.
Yeah.
I have this emotional connection to
Correct.
him. Yeah, I might cry. But when it comes to wrestling, even more so, these people's lives on screen, off screen, and you know who these people are. And of course, you're going to have this big effect, big emotional draw within you. Yeah. If something like that happens.
Well, one thing I want to talk about real quick is the drugs and the partying and stuff. What I liked about this, they didn't show it as much as like it really was in real life. Like in my opinion, I think putting it out there so much is just would downgrade the movie and downgrade the family more. That's how I feel. And I mean, there's a dark side of wrestling, but like back in the day, that's what they did. They did a ton of drugs, they partied, and there was a lot of alcohol involved.
I think low key, Low key, I don't. This kind of sounds messed up to say, but it's like if you see them doing a lot of drugs, like just a lot more times, I feel like it might lessen the emotions you feel towards them. It's like, oh, they kind of deserve
Yeah.
this, which I
Yeah.
mean, they don't deserve it in the first place, but it's like they showed it enough, but they didn't show too much to where it's like they didn't show any of the fame. I think, like from what I was like hearing, like on the documentary and stuff, I did not like they showed the fame, but it wasn't like a glaring thing. It felt like you were seeing all the effects of it though.
Yeah.
Action is the juice. What is the juiciest scene for y'all for this movie? I'm gonna throw it to you, Justin. Justin, what's your action is the juice scene?
Juiciest scene. Juiciest scene.
And that could be anything where it's like it could be emotional.
Yeah.
It could be, the action itself,
Dude.
but like emotionally, what hit you?
I have one. What hit me the most, man? It's the scene where Carrie, because I think Carrie, like he was like drunk or something, and like he's just done because he had lost his leg, and he's near the tree and he offed himself, and then Zac Efron, obviously Kevin, he goes to the house. And then he sees Kevin there or Carrie there. And then immediately he's like goes to his dad. He's like, what happened? Like, what happened to your brother? You're supposed to help my brother. Like he chokes him and just like he was so emotionally charged that he just like chokes him, brings him to the ground, and just like watching him with all that emotion, just like with just go hard on his dad, like just because like he wasn't there for him, like that really was gripping, man. It just really touches you, and it really makes you think like, did he put the business over his family? Like, was it really that important? Was his family that important to him, or was it all about making money? And so I feel like that was probably the best scene in the movie. Just because like you can kind of relate to that. Like that's something that I've dealt with family. If family, sometimes they betray you, and sometimes you can't trust them. But I feel like that it's just dark, man. Just to really see that like a father was that psychologically abusive and just evil to his
that's
kids.
the thing. It's like what blows my mind is that that Fritz himself, in his mind, he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought this is the way that I make sure that my family is treated right. We're gonna become the best. So we are the best. I have the line like we're gonna be they're gonna be the toughest, the strongest, so no one can ever hurt them. Meaning that this was the way he thought they could be set for life without having to worry about poverty or anything like that. And it's like a villain, any good villain, any of the greatest villains. If you talk about like Darth Vader, Joker, the villain always thinks that they're 100% right, that there is no other way in the world to live, and they might be right to a certain extent, and then they go 100% the wrong way about how to deal with it, right? And for him, it was the wrong way of like how to have your family set in that sense.
He's an antagonist, man. Like he's not like a full-on villain, but like he's part of the problem of that family and that whole legacy. Like he's the reason why this issue happened in the first place. So I think it was just the culture that they kind of fostered that led to the the family ending up the way it did.
And it's a very real conversation to have where it's like even in our lives, what matters the most to you? And Kevin made the right choice where it's like no matter what, family is what matters. Will, you have any thoughts on that scene?
That scene was crazy, but one thing I was like, when he picked up the body and brought it to the table, that was
I forgot about that.
That was super sad. It's like, oh my gosh, brought him into the table. And it showed like how much he loved his brother. Like he brought him inside the house after he passed and everything. Like that's crazy. And I see the pain that goes with Kevin, like emotions when he's choking and everything. Like it's nuts. Like I don't know how you could live past that.
How did he like care for his father after all those years? And it's like he's obviously aware of what happened, and it's like he's a better man than me, put it that way. Like he's a better man than me. I could not live with a man like that who wronged me, who wronged my brothers that way. Like it's something else.
Yeah. I would have lost it. I would have done the same thing.
Oh yeah, same. Will, your action is a juice scene. What is it for Iron Claw?
I think the biggest one to me is the very, very end. The final 2 minutes where you see Kevin with his boys and he's just sitting there and he's upset. Obviously he doesn't have brothers more, and his boys come up and say essentially what's wrong, and says he doesn't have any brothers, but his son says we'll be your brothers. And then as soon as that happens, he goes and plays football with them just like he did with his brother. And I think that was such a great scene, how to wrap up such a great movie, great story,
Poetry in motion.
but it wraps everything up, and it shows like Kevin is going to be in a good place, and he's going to be a good father to those boys.
And it's funny you mention him being a good father. There's a scene where after he has his kids, they're growing up, and then Carrie's on TV. They're at Fritz's house, and they're watching Carrie on TV. And Fritz is like, "Oh yeah, like look at your uncle, kids." And I'm like, "Yeah, like that's like Kevin, you got to get these kids out of that house, because the house where you lived is not the house that your kids are gonna live in, because like that sort of behavior is not needed within those kids' lives. It's just something else." A real quick side note: what do y'all think of Kevin never wearing shoes?
Hey, he's from the country, man. He's from the country, man.
I was like, he was in the ring without shoes. At the end, he's just walking without, the shoes, and I'm like, this man's a vibe.
Nah, he gotta have foot fungus, bro. He has to have foot fungus. There's no question about it.
But yeah, that ending really, that's what got me. I teared up during that ending scene, because I feel like he's gone through so much. And you brought up the scene with Carrie where it's like, Dave, or both of his other brothers had passed away at that point, and now it's his last brother, and the emotional toll of that one, where it just hit the most out of all three of them. And I was like, okay, this feels the worst, emotional possible. And then the scene that you're talking about, Will, that brought it right back. It ends in the best way possible, which is with hope, with family, and it's surprisingly positive for me.
I agree. And I think like the reason why the ending really sticks out, because you can kind of see that like Kevin, he breaks the cycle. Like he breaks the cycle of his father's, his father's trauma. Like he decides to, choose his family. He decides to parent this way, in a particular way. He decides to show love in a very different way, because the way the father shows love is through it's not necessarily unconditional love. It's a love that's like competitive. Like he, even in the beginning, like he says, right now Kevin's my favorite, but David, he's doing this. And then Mike, he could be my favorite if he does this. So it's like that's not really real love when you think about it. But like kind of seeing that change and him breaking that cycle, that's what really kind of gravitated towards me. And that's what really made me love the ending and love the story and love the approach that, Durkin took.
And for my action to the juice scene, I'm going to just go right in between both y'all scenes. And I'm going to do, my favorite scene was the afterlife scene with Carrie and the rest of the brothers. Yeah. And I assume y'all have seen like Gladiator.
Yeah.
But it's like, I love these scenes, or like these afterlife scenes, and the way they did it, with him going up on the, in the boat on the little river and getting to his brothers and the hugging and all that. It felt healing. Like there was a very good like healing emotion to that.
Yeah.
Especially with them, bringing the little brother, the oldest brother out. And that scene, it's simple. They didn't need to have that in there, but it's like for us as an audience, it's emotionally needed, to where you can't just sit through a movie where you just saw three people, either, one of them died and then two of them killed themselves, and not have some sort of like emotion come out of that, besides, being like Fritz is terrible. And that emotion where it's like Kevin can't be with his brothers, but them being together.
Yeah. It puts the rest together.
It was just poetic to me.
Yeah.
I really love that scene.
That's a good one, man. That's a good way to put it.
And I had one more though. I'm gonna go with two. The second one that I had was during the wedding, where they're in the bathroom and David is in the toilet throwing up.
Yeah.
I felt, and they do have a lot of like longer takes in this movie. I think that might be the best long take of the movie, where it's just those two brothers sitting in a stall, just being brothers, just talking, and it's one of the most honest conversations they have the entire movie.
Yeah, I think like one thing that you could definitely applaud about the movie is like the dialogue is very, very important. Like there's a reason why the dialogue is there. So it's kind of like you were saying, like all those like conversations are there so that we can see the vulnerability in their relationships, which is something that a lot of male friendships, a lot of family relationships, a lot of these are conversations we have with each other. So I kind of agree with you. Like that was probably one of the most important ones. And then it kind of draws you in and it prepares you for his death. And it's like it happens. It's so abrupt, and it's like, damn, like this really, like you're not ready for it. And that's a
Oh
really
yeah.
it really
Oh
drew
no,
me in.
not at all. And it's like you get to see where they are, and it's like Kevin is honest with him. He's like, I didn't take you jumping me so well. Like it wasn't. It was hard for me, And he's honest with his brother, and he's like, you're pushing yourself. You need to chill.
Yeah.
Like this might be too much. But he's like, wait, but I wouldn't chill if I was in your place either. I'd keep going, right? And he has that moment. He's like, don't go to Japan. He's like, nah, you going to Japan. But and then he tells him, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna have a kid. And that's the moment where it's like there, you see Dave's excited, and they get back to the wedding, and we have the happy scene, and then they hit you right with that gut punch with David dying. Great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty crazy, man. Like each like every brother had like a very crazy death. Like David, it was like he had like a intestine that was like outside of it. I forget what it's called. Like there was like an intestine.
It was like
enteritis. Yeah, it was enteritis where like the
that.
intestines kind of comes out of the abdomen, and then like the tissue dies, and that's what kind of led to his death. But like it's kind of crazy that like no one really saw this coming. No one really talked about the drugs, even after him dying. Like I forget who found him, but like they kind of swept a lot of this stuff under the rug, because like this is a family that has like a really good image. This is like the Christian Southern, like good old boys, like, and for them to have like all this information coming out saying it was a drug issue, like I'm sure that kind of like put a stain on their legacy and everything like that. So it makes a lot of sense that they were very conscious of like their image, and that really goes into like the stardom, like the the family's business and everything. So I think seeing that, man, like that was just like a tough thing to see. It's just like every single death was, I'm not saying it's something that could have been prevented, but it was something that was because of the overtraining. It was because of the steroids. It was because of the drugs. So it's part of those things, and
it's all the
they
pressure built up.
It's the pressure that plays into it. So it's like maybe had they taken a break, had he not went to Japan, would he survive? Like maybe David would have survived. Like we don't know.
In Rocky, have you seen Rocky 4?
Yeah, I've seen every single one.
So in Rocky 4, when the opening, when Apollo's fighting Ivan Drago, Rocky's like, I should have pulled him out. I should have stopped the fight, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like. That emotion. That's what it feels like to me. And with this being real people and real situations, it hits even worse. It even harder.
Yeah, I'm sure Kevin blames himself like a lot when it really wasn't even his fault. It was just they were caught in the wrong situation, and there was nothing that they could have do. The only thing that they could have done was obviously leave the business. But I mean, I'm sure that would have been an issue with the father or something like that. But like like there's nothing they could have done.
And it's like that's their entire drive was just that. And it's like if you go off that path, besides being an Olympian, if you weren't in some sort of like prestige field, then you would have practically had to leave the family. And that's what it felt like. And all of them were striving for that level of greatness, and what it cost them is more than it ever needed to. Like
cost them their lives.
Greatness should not cost you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insane, man. Insane.
Alrighty, production value. What is the most impressive piece of film? Anything where in this movie, it could be a shot, a scene, a moment, an aspect of this movie where it felt like they left everything on screen. There's nothing left off. All the juice. Production value moment. What is it for you, Will?
So my favorite shot of the whole movie was Kevin, Carrie, and David coming out to the ring. And you see the back shot, you see the front shot, and you just feel the electricity from the fans going nuts. You see the three opponents already in the ring, and the back view of them walking and running into the ring, I was like, oh my gosh, great. It gives you like those goosebumps, like as a wrestling fan, the entrance is a big, big thing. When we went to Raw, I was singing. I know you didn't know the lyrics to the songs, but I was singing. We were both chanting, when they were coming out. So seeing that was awesome. Like I loved the angles that they did and everything.
The moment when when they all three of them slide over the ropes together, bruh, that was 10 out of 10.
It was. And then like they started wrestling, and I was like, dang, this is like a work of art. Like everything was precise, everything was in unison together. I was like, it was awesome to see that. And then you also saw like I said, the fans, they were electric. They were loving this family, and you could tell that this, as growing up loving wrestling, you have those heroes. So like Goldberg, you got Sting, etc. Those were my, idols and heroes in the wrestling business. You see those fans, they're like, oh my gosh, the Von Erichs, they're local, etc. Those are our heroes. So those fans love them to death. And I love how that shot captured all that.
So when they were making the movie, actually, they shot in Louisiana, and the extras themselves during Kevin's first scene where he's fighting the Sheik. Sheik is actually played by
Chavo Guerrero, shout out.
We're going to talk about Chavo Guerrero soon. But when they're doing that scene, when the Sheik comes out, I think it was the Sheik or the guy that's with him, the real fans, like the extras that were in the at the set, they literally started booing the guy because they already had hate for the man. And the first AD, the assistant director, had to go like, guys, we're not shooting right now. It's like, funny. No, it's like, we hate that guy. So it's like the energy in that room, even when they were shooting it, was palpable because these people were fans that were in there, and they were enjoying what they were seeing, and that's awesome to see. Justin, what's your production value moment here?
Production value moment. I'm gonna say the opening where it's black and white, and it's the dad, it's Fritz Von Erich, and he's just like banging this guy's head into the ground, like just like really sets the tone for the movie. It's intense. And it really, it makes you think about, what Fritz's legacy was, what the work that he put in to make this family a big name. So it's kind of like, you can kind of compare like the son to the father, and like he had all these expectations. And again, it kind of coincides with like what I was saying like before, like this is a generation from generation to generation. This is the father who wanted to set the tone. And of course, like he went about things the wrong way, but he loved his family. He was really just trying to protect them in the best way he knew. So I feel like the opening was really that was pretty intense, and it was loud too. It's just like you hear it, like feel it. It's like, oh damn, like I'm in the ring, like I'm really in the ring, like kind of feel like that it's intense. Like it was really intense.
Yeah, and you hear the audience around him too. They pump up the audience. Like I don't think there's any music at that moment. And you kind of like the movie's called Iron Claw. And it's like when he puts that claw on that man, you feel the intensity of it. And they don't even show the other guy. You just see Holt or you see Fritz sitting there putting in the work on this man, and you see like the dread of like this intensity, and then he walks outside. It's like, hey guys, hey, what's up, guys?
Yeah.
And his wife's like, I'm not watching this. I didn't watch anything. And it's like you can see both sides of the fame right there for what it was for Fritz, where it's like he's trying to get his family right, and he's got to do this. He's got to be the villain to do that.
Exactly. And I think those are heels, right? He was a heel. But like heels typically they're like very likable like people. But like Fritz, he played a Nazi. Like at that time, like, when you're playing a Nazi, like you're not a likable human being. So like it's kind of crazy, like in the business. Irredeemable. Like in the business, like it's kind of crazy how he was this villain. He was this heel. And then he basically turned his family into like the main attraction, and they became like the good old boys, the all Americans, and kind of took control of his family's legacy. Like that's just like an interesting dynamic that you see with like in the film.
And it's very interesting. You were talking about before how he's worried about the image and like, the drugs and all that. It would shift the image of what the family was. And was he more worried about the vision that everyone saw than he was about his kids, ultimately? Like, he was worried about them to some extent, but, what we see in the film, the way he acts with his kids is too intense. He's going too hard on them.
That's real.
And literally, Kevin, at the beginning of the film is like, Ma, like, he's going too hard on him. And she says, like, that's between y'all. Y'all deal with it. And it's like,
she doesn't know how to deal with, her kids, which is kind of crazy because the father is the patriarch. Father is the one that kind of makes most of those decisions. So it's just the way Prince was raised. It's the family that he came from is the type of culture that he was a part of. So, I mean, that's part of it. And then it's a generational thing. Like our fathers, there are some things that we do that they deem unacceptable, like crying. My dad was a hard ass. Like he grew up poor and everything. So like he really made sure that he was on my ass. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, like when I was younger, but like now I understand why. But there are some things that, the way he went about things, I definitely probably wouldn't do that to my child. So it's like, masculinity is changing over time. People's definition of it, like it may be different. What I deem as like masculine may be different from someone else's culture or like someone else's life. So it's kind of crazy to just see those things change from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the film.
Oh yeah. And for me, so my production value moment, it's kind of in the same realm as what Will had, but it's all the intercutting, like the editing itself that they have in this movie. The especially the rush montage where we see Carrie, lifting the weights, and the other brother he turns on the rush, and then it cuts to them in the ring, and they're lifting weights. They're at the bar. They're you see all the highs of like them just pumping iron, wrestling, and just being crazy and being what the Von Erichs were.
Yeah.
And they have a few scenes throughout the movie where they're cutting from one thing to another. There's a lot of intercutting, and I think it's really well done in this movie where you get to have a lot of stuff going on. It doesn't take too much time. You don't feel like it's taking, a lot of years, a lot of months in the story. And it speaks to the testament of the editing of this movie where I think the movie is like 2 hours and 12 minutes.
Yeah.
But this movie felt so epic. It felt like you got the full scale of their story without it being like 6 hours.
Yeah.
And they could do they could
have done a lot more. And it's kind of crazy, like, because I believe is it the Miz was supposed to be in this? No, it wasn't the Miz. It's MJF. MJF was right.
MJF was an extra in one of the scenes. Yes.
I mean, okay, so put it this way. No, you're right. So MJF is actually credited as a producer, an executive producer on this movie because they cut his scenes out. He was supposed to be an extra.
He's the brother.
Eric,
or the fake,
he's a Von Erich brother that they
brother.
essentially
The
brought
fake
in.
one.
Yeah, the fake one. And they didn't take that well to their, to their image, but they had to cut that out because it's like emotionally it looked like they kind of went through to the ending faster.
Yeah.
And if they had the drama of like having like, oh, now we're gonna have another brother, then it kind of takes away from like the pacing of that story.
Really
so
does.
They just cut it out. You see him for one scene, and if you're a fan, it's like, oh yeah, this MJF, he's awesome. And he actually is really, really good at what he does. That man
he's hilarious.
Very talented.
He's hilarious, man.
Yeah. And it's like not even just like WWE. He has or
AEW,
yes, but it's
AEW.
Like in Practical Jokers, they had him on for an episode, and bro just doled out. He's so funny.
Dude, that's hilarious.
He's so funny.
That's hilarious. But I definitely feel like they put everything that was needed in the movie. Like they didn't necessarily put all this sandwich in a lot of this stuff that was irrelevant. Like they put what was needed, but they also cut stuff that made sense. Like, cause obviously, like you were saying, the youngest brother he was put into the business too. And he was not cut out for it. He was like 5'6". He was like he wasn't the best. He wasn't athletic. He had asthma or something like that. He took like a drug or something for asthma. And that's what they were saying, like it stunted his growth. But he wasn't cut out for it. But and I feel like that the pressure of having to be like your older brothers and just being the youngest and not being cut out for that. I feel like that's his death probably was the hardest for Kevin. But I get why they cut it because it would have been repetitive. It would have been there were so many deaths inside the movie and there wasn't really a place to put that. So I understand why they, cut the movie the way it did. But it makes a lot of sense. But the emphasis of the story is still there. So it really doesn't take away from the plot at all.
Yeah. So let's move on to dialogues. So dialogues meaning not dialogues in the sense of like an American sense. When I thought of this category, when it comes to dialogues, I mean it in a very like old Bollywood sense where it's like if you watch a movie, it doesn't say like screenplay written by this person. It'll literally say dialogues because at the end of the day, when you're watching a movie, the lines that stay with you, they don't have to be some like, poetic line or something like that, something complicated. Yeah. It's like the simple lines that stay with you and like you might like say them to your friends. That's what matters. And that dialogue affects you, obviously, if you're talking about it still. So I'm going to throw to you, Justin. What is that piece of dialogue or the first one that you think of where it's like that affected you the most out of this movie? And let's talk about it.
My dad said, if we have, what was it? I forget what it is. Like we have God, something, this and that. If Yeah, if we protect each other.
If we're the toughest, we're the
Yeah,
strongest,
if
the
we're the
most
toughest,
successful,
the strongest.
nothing could hurt us.
Exactly. Which is really a
We
really
loved
good
our
thing.
father. We loved wrestling.
Yeah.
And like he says all that. And it's at the beginning of the movie when he's like running through at the farm.
Yeah.
He's just running to the house essentially, and we get into the vibe of like, yeah, like this is what the family's about.
Yeah. And like it kind of goes into the theme like you can be all those things. You can be tough, you can be strong, but you're still human. You're still, I mean, you can be a man, but you're still a human, man. You have emotions, you go through things. I mean, that's part of life. And I feel like that was really just the themes of just like what masculinity means to you and like what, being vulnerable looks like. That was really what stuck out to me. And that was one of the quotes that really resonated with me.
And I think, so when it comes to life, this is a bit of a real life thing, but it's like, if you're going to have a life, everybody's life, no matter how much money you have, how much money you don't have, you're always going to go through good days and bad days. This life, this world is just a cycle.
Yeah.
And it felt like Fritz was always teaching them how to deal with the best days, where it's like, I'm trying to be strong to have this day. But when it came to the darkest days, the lowest moments, he gave his kids zero training on how to deal with it when they're sitting in a room alone just with their thoughts. And that hurt them. It feels like it hurt them the most out of anything.
Really did.
And we can see where it's like Kevin had his wife, but everyone else didn't really truly have someone there in their ring all the time.
Yeah.
And it just hurts so much to see that.
Yeah. Speaking of his wife, Lily James, man, acting her ass off. She was acting her ass off. She's British. I didn't even know that. I was like, this girl, is she from Texas?
Oh, you didn't know that?
Nah, dude. Because
have you seen Baby Driver?
Oh shoot, yes. Okay, never mind. Yeah, that's her.
Nah, she put on that same accent and she ran with it, and she is so good in this movie.
Bro, she's actually really good. No, she's been in a lot of good movies, man. She's been in, like, I think she played Pamela Anderson, which is pretty crazy. And she looked just like her. I was like, damn, like range. I see you with that range.
And she's played she's played Cinderella and all sorts of stuff. And I feel like this, like when it comes to her career, she's choosing the right roles, because this is one to have in her. Harris Dickinson, the guy that played David, he's British too, right? Oh yeah, or you've seen Triangle of Sadness, so you already know. Yeah.
And he was good in that one too. Stole the show.
Oh yeah. So Will, any lines, any dialogues?
This one stuck out. This is actually from the trailer. It's when Lily James, Pam, is on the date with Zac Efron character Kevin, and she said, "What do you want in life, Kevin Von Erich?" And he says, "I want to be with my family, be with my brother." And I was like, holy moly. Like, he loves his family so much. He loves brothers. He wants to be with them all the time. And the shows not only the love he has for his whole family, but also his business, because that's what they're doing too. So he's going to be with them no matter what. And he loves wrestling. So I thought that was very interesting.
And I think that scene is just the perfect piece of exposition that they have in this movie, because he talks about, I love my family. I love my brothers, and this is what I want to do with them. And honestly, I'm not going to lie. I felt like when Zac was like doing that, I got goosebumps, because something's going to happen in this movie. And the way he was talking about his brothers, you can feel that love through the screen. And I love that moment. And besides that, he's talking about like, oh, like I want to be the world heavyweight champion. And she's like, well, I mean, isn't this all just acting? And the way that they explain the wrestling, like the business side of stuff, and how it's essentially just like a work promotion. It's simple but effective, but it's like anybody who doesn't watch wrestling, you can tell right away that this is the story, this is what's going to happen, and you don't have to have anything, superfluous, like some chart and like they're going to move up or something like that. This scene explains everything perfectly. And it's like the emotions there, and the plot is there too. It's a great scene. And I'm gonna touch on the last piece of dialogue where I think all of us probably got hit with it. And you were talking about it before, which was Kevin himself. He's sitting there watching his kids play, and he says that I'm not a brother anymore. And his kids come and comfort him, and they say, we'll be your brothers. And that moment right there, it's pulled out of real life, and I think it's one of the best lines in the movie. And I feel like if that moment wasn't there, I would not like this movie as much. And that's the importance of that line. Like, the impact of that dialogue is just something else. And it really does, like, you feel the pain that Kevin is going through at that moment perfectly. And it's like Zach's acting is amazing in that scene, and you can feel that emotion on his face, but that line just sells everything for him. And that moment right there, it broke my heart. But it's like at the same second, the kids come and, make him whole again. And it's perfect. I think that scene is just perfect. And that moment is one of the best moments, I think, of 2023, of just maybe this entire decade I've seen so far. I've heard from a lot of people that line itself is just the one that just got to them the most. And I feel like anybody who comes to this movie, they will not forget that line at all. What is the best needle drop or music use in this movie for y'all? Justin, did you have any?
I gotta be honest, man, I'm not really familiar with a lot of the music, but
I'm not either.
yeah, like dude, it kind of reminds me of like Rocky. Like Rocky had like a lot of 80s music, and it gets you pumped, man. Like I don't know what it is, like it just kind of gets you in that mood, like to just like really go at it and like fight somebody or like throw hands.
I'm gonna throw three of them at y'all. The first one is "Don't Fear the Reaper" by Blue Oyster Cult. It's the song that's playing the first night that Kevin's fighting at the Sportatorium, where they start the shot outside. The guy grabs the cooler out of the trunk, and then the shot's just following him in, and you get to see the guy signing the autographs and all that stuff. And it's like a long take that they go through, and that song is playing, and it just felt like a high of life. It felt like we're in Dallas, Texas. It's like 89 or whatever year it is, and that's America. I feel like if you show that scene to anybody, they don't live in America or anything like that, then you understand what that vibe was. And the other one we already talked about, the Rush song, the montage where they're juicing, they're getting into the ring and fighting, all that. That one hit really well. I don't listen to Rush really, but that song, that was fire. What'd y'all think about "Thank God I'm a Country Boy" at the wedding?
I'm done. You know what's crazy, bro? That's actually one of the best scenes in the movie. Cause like, if you really look at it, like it comes so natural, like to Zac Efron and everything. And like, I was like, damn, like, bro, kind of smooth with it. Like the way he's dancing and everything. And like, you could tell that like, it's just compared to like everyone else who was doing it. Like he's not trying that hard. Like he's really like, just really acting into it, like really playing into the character. So like some of that, like stuff like that really comes off like authentic.
Yeah, he was smooth as butter. He looks so good doing it.
I want to say this now. We got to give a shout out to Kenny Ortega, because without Kenny Ortega, he would have not done so well, because in High School Musical, that's who taught him how to dance. I just had to get a shout out. I love, like we said, we used to sing Disney Channel songs on the bus. Yep. Shout out High School Musical.
Throwback.
Love that movie. I actually have Troy Bolton's jersey. I wear it like playing basketball.
Bangers. Nah, those movies used to be bangers, bro.
Oh yeah.
This Disney Channel ain't never coming back after that, bro.
They haven't peaked since.
They haven't
peaked since.
Bruh. They haven't peaked. Bangers on bangers.
And I was like, I don't know if they do this at weddings in Dallas, like in Texas, where they just like, thank God I'm a country boy. But it like you said, it's like these guys were that, all-American team, all-American family. And that song, that scene just perfectly puts together their vibe. And same thing, it's a fun moment with a gut punch right after it, which is David, passing away.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the fun stuff. Guys, you know who should have been in this movie? Come on, y'all. Let's recast a role. Justin, do you have anybody to recast in this movie?
And it's funny, like I was thinking about this last week when you said it. If I had to recast, damn, I had a really, maybe like an Austin Butler. Like an Austin Butler is Kevin. Yeah, just because like he's really good on the accent. I just feel like he'd be fit
Austin
for it,
Butler, hot off of Elvis, which Elvis was one of your favorite movies last year, right?
Oh, Elvis. Well, like I grew up watching Full House and Uncle Jesse, so that's why I loved Elvis so much. So when I saw that movie, I was like, "Dadgum, Austin Butler can act." I remember him off of Zoe 101, and
I didn't even know that.
Him mature.
He was Zoe 101.
Jamie Lynn Spears' boyfriend. Yeah. In the show for, what was it, like half a season or something? I can't remember, but to see him grow as an actor, man, he killed it as Elvis.
That would be interesting to see him, but I don't know if he could do the physical though. Like this man, Zach, went hard in the paint.
Nah, dude, he was on something. He was on some PEDs. He was on HGH. He was on something. Cause like, bro, you don't get that jack that fast without taking something. I mean,
he said 6 to 7 months. That's what he said. Bro.
Chicken and
Right.
rice ain't gonna help you that much. Come on now. I get it, but he's more jacked than Kevin is in real
And
life.
that's the thing in when it comes to these movies and these contracts, even I don't want to name any names. Well, let's just say like Marvel characters and like these
Right.
big contracts with these scenes where they have to have their shirts off and stuff. It is in their contracts. So they're going to use whatever they can
Yeah.
to get to that. What I get mad about is that they go on like Men's Health and stuff like this. Like, oh, this is what I did to get fit.
No, you didn't.
And it's like, it's so unrealistic, right? Arnold would be disappointed, y'all.
Arnold. You know, they all know the truth, man.
Justin, you might not know, but the portrayal of Ric Flair wasn't too hot in the movie. Like the man, Loki sounded
Really?
like he sounded a little Latino to me when he was like, you know, talking the smack on the mic real quick. So Will, I know you had issue with this too. Let me know what you want to recast here.
I read some comments and I'm like, they knew who they were going to pick as Ric Flair. I was like, are you flipping kidding me? That's the best they could do. And so I want to recast Ric Flair. That is the main problem I have with this movie. This movie probably could be an 11 out of 10, but just because Ric Flair, that bootleg Ric Flair is in this movie, it goes down to like a 9.5 out of 10. All right.
Great.
So here's what we're going to do. All right.
I'm done.
All right.
Nature boy.
Bro, get out of here.
All right. Yeah, this is my Trevor Lawrence. Y'all, it's my Trevor Lawrence wig. I was Trevor Lawrence for Halloween.
I'm done.
So anyway, I'll just wear a blonde wig, play Ric Flair because I know how to do it. No, but
Woo.
seriously, let's be real, y'all. You cannot replace Ric Flair. That's the one thing. You cannot replace Ric Flair. He is such a goat.
They
and
should have
there's
just
nobody like
they
him.
should have just thrown
like
the
him.
CGI on him. Ric Flair came in to do himself.
If you watch TNA and Impact Wrestling when Ric Flair was there back in 2009, 2010, and he was part of the faction Fortune, you had Jay Lethal, who used to do Macho Man impersonations. Then he did a Ric Flair. Fantastic. But he's still not Ric Flair. You know, you cannot recast him. So I was like, why don't you do CGI just like they did with Princess Leia in Rogue One? Why not?
See,
You know, and
usually
and you
That's
can and here's
funny.
the thing, the interviews, they can easily get an old interview of Ric Flair and figure out how to
and
use
just throw it in there.
in the movie. Like, why
Yeah.
not? And then in the movie, if you don't want to use CGI, why just don't show his face? Don't show his face because he, in my opinion, you gotta know what Ric Flair looks like. It's kind of hard, like, to match, you know, Ric Flair. Don't show his face. Like in the ring, make sure
Yeah.
like the angles you can't even really see his face. And like when he's talking to him in the locker room, you have him in the background or something, or the camera angle where you don't see his face. Or like I said, CGI. That was my biggest thing.
See, I think when it came to Ric Flair, I thought the acting that he did in the locker room, that was really good. But it's just the trash talk on the mic that it felt off. And for once, I might be behind the CGI stuff because they've done it to like Sam Jackson for I think it was like Captain Marvel or something. It looked the best there. But
Yeah.
besides that,
Captain Marvel.
it's about it's hit or miss. But I'd be down for this. What else you have?
Okay, so now recasting. See, this is not, I guess, recasting. This is adding people. So I would have loved, because you know some stories or movies you have if it's based off a true story, they actually have people from the family in that movie. And I would have loved to see like a real Von Erich as a side
Word.
character or somebody in the background. But now,
Okay.
you know, based off of the story, they'd be like, nah, it's too much, you know? So, I mean, I don't know. But if you think about it, Ross and Marshall, who are Kevin's sons, they're actually wrestlers and they just made their AEW debut on, I believe it was on Rampage a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And then you got and then you got Carrie Von Erich's daughter, Lacey Von Erich, who was part of the Beautiful People in TNA. So I would have loved to see just somebody from the family in this movie, even if they weren't wrestlers, like they were just a side character or just extras, you know, and you see a shot
Yes.
of them and you're like, oh, I know who that is.
Yeah.
I know this sounds kind of stupid, but if you watch High School Musical 2, I remember this scene. Miley Cyrus was in the background for 2 seconds, and that
Bro,
was such a big deal.
Bro,
You know,
bro.
if you would have just added like one of them for like 5 seconds, I think that would have been really cool.
So the only thing I know about that is that they didn't really bring the Von Erichs in on the movie till after they shot the movie. The only
It's
thing
crazy.
that Kevin said about the movie was like to like the director was just make sure that you show that I like the love that me and my brothers had. And that's literally what the movie is, right? So that means like he didn't
Yeah.
bring, and plus he was like the whole fact that they didn't bring in one brother. He didn't want to, it's a ruthless thing to do, but it's like for their movie they had to do it for this adaptation, and he just didn't want to have to, you know, be there and have that conversation with him because he might have had to have, you know,
Consult.
put the guy back in the movie. Yeah, exactly. Like it's a hard thing to do, and it's a wild thing to do, but you understand why they did it.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, man. I get it.
I only had one recast besides like putting Will as Ric Flair, I guess. But I wanted to recast the mother, like their mom. I don't think she does a bad job.
Yeah.
She's good in the
Too
movie.
young. She's
Yeah.
young, man.
Do you know
Yeah,
Frances McDormand? She's in a bunch of Coen Brothers movies. I'll show y'all photos of her afterwards. Either her or Diane Lane, y'all might know her. She played the mother. She played the mom in Batman vs Superman. That's the most popular thing she's done.
She's
Superman's
Dude,
mom.
She would have been perfect. She has a southern accent.
Exactly,
too.
right?
She has like a southern accent. Like she sounds like she's from the South.
So she and Fritz, the guy who played Fritz, Holt McCallany, they're about the same age. So it would have lined up perfectly. And she's a great actress. So the way they would have played that together would have been, honestly, I think it might have been better. But besides that, I mean, I'm not complaining too much about this movie. We have so much love for this movie, and for once, this is a movie that hasn't exactly gotten a full reception yet. We don't know what the Oscars are or anything like that, so we have a interesting perspective as to what do we think this movie deserves in terms of like nominations, wins, anything like that. Like, what should everyone else see and love about this movie?
Yeah, man, I think definitely the movie's gonna be recognized for Zac Efron as a lead. Like a lot of people are talking about him kind of just elevating his career, and like he kind of just changed his like the perception of himself in the media, because like a lot of people felt he was the good old boy. A lot of people felt he was just like the teenage heartthrob. Like all that's kind of gone. Like it kind of shows that he has a lot more range. So I could see him being nominated, but I think this movie, you could applaud it on its cinematography, from just being like very accurate to like the wrestling at the time, and just like the set designs, and like what the ring looked like, what the sportatorium looked like.
So a little perspective real quick. This movie was made for like $20 million. And that's very cheap for how great this movie looks. And it's a testament to everyone in the filmmaking process. So like you said, production design, cinematography definitely need nominations. I think they're both fantastic. And Zach, I wouldn't say Zach should have an Oscar. I think he deserves this nom. Like I've always thought very high of him. If you watch anything like 17 Again, all the old stuff, this man has charisma.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
He always needed a role where he can pack in the juice, and he's given a script where he can deal with, some really juicy stuff. And he's tried doing these sorts of movies, from like Paperboy to like playing that one like serial killer, all of that sort of stuff, but nothing.
Yeah, he played Charles Manson, I believe.
Nothing like this.
Or Ted
Bundy, yeah.
Yeah, it's different, man. Like there's a lot of emotion behind it. Not something you expect from Zac Efron, but I mean, yeah, you got to recognize. And then also, I was gonna say, just the writing, the screenplay, like I feel like you have to recognize it for being just so different, for opening up different conversations.
Yeah, this goes into original screenplay, meaning that Durkin had to find this stuff and write it. And he speaks about it, how when it comes to wrestling, Will knows better than me how there's all sorts of rumors going around. There's a lot of lore, and you kind of have to sift through what's real and what's myth, and find the story within that. And then he found that story and made it emotional, and it comes out amazingly on screen, right? And that writing definitely deserves a lot of love. Will, did you have any thoughts about that Zach nom?
Well, that was the main person I was going to say needed an Oscar. I mean, I love Lily James. She's great. I think Jeremy Allen White, great job.
Carey.
Zac Efron, though. Zac Efron is just, I mean, he's
powerhouse.
One of my favorite actors, and he's awesome. I mean, he can play any role, like played in High School Musical, played in 17 Again, like you said. He played in comedies, Baywatch. You got Dirty Grandpa, which was also filmed in Savannah.
I forgot about that.
Great. I mean, it wasn't a great movie, but I'm telling you, I was entertained, you know. But he can do anything like the emotional like roles too. Like he can show the emotion on the screen and the physicality of this character and how he got there. I mean, I think he deserves something. I mean, he did do a great job, and I can't see anybody else doing this good of a job in
Yeah.
this role.
I feel like the entire cast is like the acting is off the chain. Like it's perfect in this movie. They might
Yeah,
get
I
like
know.
the SAG,
Ensemble's
yeah, like
amazing.
Screen Actor Guild. They give like best ensemble awards. They might win this one this year. I think they deserve to win
Yeah.
this one this year. And there's a lot of good ensembles this year, but nothing like this. Nothing as personal as this. Yeah,
For
I'm
sure.
excited to see what it gets, and I hope the Oscars respect this movie because I don't think it's done too hot at the box office yet, and I feel like the story
It'll
itself,
pick up.
yeah, the story itself and everything else around it, I think it's got a really good meaning to it at the end, and this is the sort of movie that they should be pushing.
I agree. And plus, we need some new films, man. Like all these franchises,
Oh
all
yeah.
these big box office flops. We need something new, and this is great. Seeing something new like
And
this.
I'm not gonna trash on Barbie, but it's like I feel like that's a movie that might get nominated for Best Picture. And if this doesn't get nominated and Barbie does, I'm gonna be pissed.
Boybe, bruh. Give Boybe some
Yeah,
nominations.
it's the Oscars are like, they're real iffy at best. Sometimes they get it
Yeah.
right, sometimes they don't. But I hope they get it right with at least Zach and like some of these technical like categories.
For sure, man. This movie was my Barbie.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. It's my Barbie. It's my
so
Barbie, bro.
my Barbie this year might have been John Wick 4. Past Lives.
Okay, now you're right about that one.
Past
You're right
Lives
about
is
that
up
one.
there, and then a movie both.
I haven't seen that one
yeah,
yet.
it's real good. I gotta recommend
I
it to
gotta watch
y'all and
it.
everybody listening. Past Lives was fantastic, and the last one is Origin, which I ain't gonna lie, it's even more emotional than this movie to me. Honestly, it's that good. It comes out next month. Y'all should
Okay.
definitely check it out.
Damn. John Bernthal?
Yeah.
Is that
John
the one?
Bernthal, he's supporting in that movie. Anjanou Ellis Taylor, she's the main lead.
Yeah.
And she's the
Yeah,
only
I'm
person
familiar with her.
besides Zac Efron this year where like their performance is like it gives me goosebumps.
You're kidding.
Yeah, that
I gotta
good.
check
Oh
that
no,
out, man.
no, like run to the theater when it comes. Like it's a very emotional story, but what they do with that movie and the message behind it, Ava DuVernay, she's becoming a goat with that movie. I think it's her best
Nah,
one yet.
She's a powerhouse, man.
Oh, yeah.
She's a powerhouse.
So legacies just meaning whether it's, what you see in the future about this movie, what it means for the people in front of the camera, behind the camera. Is there anything perspective wise that you just love about these people within this project?
Man, I think Lily James, her career's only gonna go up past this, man. Like same thing with Zac Efron. Same thing.
I'm gonna
Like,
point out Harris Dickinson. He was in Kingsman, which he
Yup.
wasn't. The movie wasn't
Dude.
good. It's not his fault. You've seen him in Triangle of Sadness, right? He's popping off there.
dude, he kills it. He kills it in that one.
He's
hilarious.
I don't know if you know who Steve McQueen is, the director, but he's working with Steve McQueen on his next movie. And I think Harris Dickinson is gonna get an Oscar within the next 10 years.
Yeah. I think it's like in terms of like the leading men, it's gonna be Austin Butler, obviously Michael B. Jordan, all those guys. Yeah, I would say him. Like he's gonna be a superstar, man. He's gonna be a big
I
name.
hope that
so.
I think Zac Efron is gonna become a character actor. I think that's what it is. I think he's gonna take on these very good character roles, and he's just gonna kill them. And people are like, "Oh, Zac Efron's a good actor." It's like, yeah, he's always been a good one, but like now he's juicing.
Mm-hmm.
I will give a shout out real quick to Jeremy Allen White. He's on The Bear. He was fantastic as Carrie.
Dude, the Bears it's the best show on television, bro.
Yeah,
It's the
Will,
best
you
show.
got to check out The Bear soon.
Dude, it's so good. And it's just a show about cooking. But I promise you, like, it's it's funny, like, it's dramatic, like, at times just, like, stressful, like, and it relates to so many things, man. It reminds me of, like, time when I used to work at a restaurant. So it's, like, very good, man.
Last one,
Yeah, I'll
last
check that
person.
one out.
Yeah. Last one I'm going to bring up is Stanley Simmons, the guy that plays the youngest brother. This is his first big role. Like, think about that. Like, he is going
Bro.
bar for bar with Jeremy Allen White, with Carrie, Kevin, all his brothers, and then his dad, like the guy that plays his dad, Holt McCallany, fantastic actor too, character actor. But this is like one of his best roles to date. Whatever, but Stanley Simmons, this kid was great, and I think he's about to pop off too.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite the opening for a career.
Oh yeah.
That is quite the opening, dude.
Will, did you have anybody?
Obviously, Zac Efron, Lily James, fantastic. Mainly knew her from Baby Driver, but she did like Cinderella and stuff. I'm telling you, Jeremy Allen White did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes they said in the movie was, "I'm scared, man. I'm out of control." And I think that was a
Mm,
big quote in that. Okay.
And just speaking about this movie, they shot this movie in 36 or 37 days.
no
And the
way,
fact that they did that with action
That is
scenes is
crazy.
something else.
dude. That's pretty wild.
That's it. That's all they had. Yeah.
That's wild, man. A24 is picking the
Yeah.
right films, man.
And they only they had 7 weeks for prep, meaning they had 7 weeks to learn how to fight, to do all the wrestling moves. And
Dude.
they weren't messing around. This is like the real stuff, the real cables and all that. There's no padding or anything. The stuff that the real wrestlers do, these guys went and did it, and they did it extremely well.
Bruh.
You could not tell that they were,
Oh, for
they were
sure,
probably
man.
in pain
And
every day
I
after
think
set.
one criticism that I was seeing online is that, a lot of the actors, they don't necessarily look like the people in real life. The likeness of the characters aren't the same. But it's not that, it's the performances that are really more important in the movie. And I feel like that all that stuff goes out the window because it's so
Sean
good.
Durkin said that, number one, that he cast all the guys, all the brothers, he cast them because of what they were doing as an actor. He wasn't worried about their physicality. Like, if you look at Jeremy Allen White, sorry. Yeah. If you look at him and look at Carrie in real life, they look so
Nothing
vastly
alike.
different. And Sean Durkin wasn't even forcing them to like exercise or anything like that. Whatever they took upon themselves, they did themselves. And even then, like, whatever they had on screen
Yeah.
was fantastic. And I wouldn't really want to come. And I feel like it's kind of a thing where it's like, people are always judging people's bodies, and people were complaining that like, oh, like Robert Pattinson wasn't like, ripped or anything for
Okay.
Batman. It's probably because he wasn't
Yeah.
doing the peds.
And plus, and
No
let's be
HGH for
real,
him.
man. Like, you look at like a lot of like Marines or like,
And that is the truth from
Marines,
what I
you look at
heard.
like SEALs, they don't necessarily look like bodybuilders. They don't look like massive guys. Like, that's just the media. Like, you look at what's that guy's name who did like the Hell Week challenge? What's that brother's name, man? Light skinned dude. I forget, but like
Hell Week?
he's like a really big, he's like a motivational speaker and everything. And like he doesn't look like this massive guy, but he's a tall, lanky dude who's like very athletic. But like that's like a real body type. That's what a real person looks like. So it's kind of crazy that we have like these unrealistic body standards, but they're foolish. They're silly. They're silly, man. So it's like I said, like the
yeah.
performances, way more important, way more significant.
Last week we were talking about Jennifer Lawrence in the Hunger Games, and people were like, oh, like just because she was a little thick in Hunger Games, they were trying to give her crap for it. And she looks good. She looks
Yeah.
good in those movies. And it's just like, why y'all hating on this
saying.
woman? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, she's amazing in that role. It's like the acting's there, and it doesn't matter what you look like. It really is the acting.
Is it
itself.
believable? Can I just spend some of that disbelief and actually like think that you can do this? Like, and I feel like that's more or less what we should be focused on as, fans of these movies. Like it's one thing to, have like this massive person who's jacked, but like, can they act? Can they really act? And like, that's a lot of problem. Like that's a big problem for a lot of actors, man. Like you can be juiced up all you want.
Oh yeah. And there's a select few where like you have like a John Cena or like Batista that we were talking about, where these guys are jacked, right?
They
But
can.
they can act. They can really
man.
act, right?
Bautista's the best. Bautista's the best in the
I love
WWE, man. He's the best
he-
wrestler turned
he is,
actor.
He is. He
So,
is. He is.
Debatable.
Oh, yeah. But Cena has, I don't think he's had the time, or he hasn't chosen like those roles yet, but like I feel like both of them have like very great serious roles. Sapper Morton, Dave Bautista in Blade Runner 2049, like the man comes in for 5 minutes and makes the entire movie work.
I mean, Bautista was in Knives Out. Bautista was in Dune. He was in Dune. Like he's so versatile. Like he can do so many different things, and like he can do comedy, and you believe it. It's because he's a good actor. So
yeah. So MVP for this movie, most valuable player. As Katie says, you the MVP, mom. So for this movie, every movie is a collaborative effort. But who do you think for this movie itself, for Iron Claw, who do you think if they weren't there behind the camera or in front of the camera, that this movie would not be as great as it was?
It's Zac, man. Zac. I mean,
It's
yeah,
Zac. MVP,
he's a star,
my
man.
MVP
Like,
is
he
Zac
really
too.
proved it. Like he just really stole the show from me. So I think it's Zac.
I think he was, whether it's like physically present or emotionally present, he is there the entire way. And there's a lot of moments in this movie where there's like something going on in the foreground, and then we have to see his reaction where it's like, oh yeah, it's like your brother's about to jump you now. Now he's going to be the guy going for the championship. And you can see within his eyes at that dinner scene where he's just so disappointed and he's going through all these emotions. And it happens a lot during this movie where he he has to sell those emotions on his face. And yeah, there's some actors that obviously can do it, but the way he did it, it just touched my soul. I think it was fantastic. Will, hit us with that MVP. Who you the MVP?
Without
Who is it?
this man, because I did it a little bit different. Without this man, none of this would have been possible. Okay. I'm going Chavo Guerrero Jr. Okay. And for those who do not know who Chavo Guerrero is, I'm a big wrestling fan. So I grew up watching him. So WWE, TNA, AEW, etc. All right, man. This guy's been a tag team champion. He's been cruiserweight champion, etc. Several great tag teams with him. He played the Sheik, which is one of the wrestling extras, one of the opponents, and was the stunt wrestling coordinator for this film. And so I'm going to pull up a quote and I'm going to read it. It says, none of us knew how to wrestle and we had a very short time to learn. Harry Dickinson, who played David Von Erich, Chavo was a massive part of the film. He would teach us the moves and choreography, and and work with us every day to make sure we were as authentic as we could be. And if you do not have the right person, it's not going to go as well, and it's not going to run as smooth.
Runs the whole film.
He is one of, people don't give him enough credit in the ring and outside the ring. Like, that dude can wrestle. Like, he is a great wrestler, and he's a great teacher, obviously. Like, look at what he just did in this movie.
And see, that's the thing. So I was talking about how Durkin was saying that he's a fan, right? Like, he grew up as a fan, whether he was living in London or in New York. The man was a fan of wrestling. And what he did on this movie, a good director is a coach. And this man brought in Chavo, and he told Chavo says this, is he's like, yeah, like, they brought me in early, and he's like, we want to craft this together. Chavo has authorship within the physicality of this movie. And the way I'm talking about it, every single role, movement, the wrestling sells extremely well. I thought, and it's like every single, like, there's all sorts of different camera movements throughout every single fight, but the wrestling itself stays consistent, and it is so well done. And it is definitely a testament to Chavo Guerrero Jr.'s, competency as a person who can get actors to hit their marks and do all this stuff. It's action work, and it's so well done. He also worked on what is it? The Glow, the wrestling show Glow.
That's the show, I want to say. That's the show about the female wrestlers, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
It's the one. I think it takes place in like the 70s or 80s. It's low key, but if you have it, or if anybody hasn't seen it, I definitely recommend checking it out.
He also did Lucha Underground as well. He was a supervising producer for Lucha Underground.
Okay, man, great stuff. Props to him, because the movie would not look as good as it did without him. And it's like every single movie that you make, whether it's an action movie, a drama, a comedy, whatever it is, you have to have those ringers that come in and like put in the work and get these people to do the right stuff. Like, there's a reason why John Wick looks so good, and that's because they're number one, doing the prep, and number two, they have people there who understand how to do this stuff, and they're being given the freedom. Because sometimes these people, like Chavo, they don't get the freedom. They're brought in at a certain point. They're like, okay, do your job, and then you need to leave. But it sounds like Chavo was there a lot of the time. And Durkin even said, I had to bring him in. I was like, Durkin told Guerrero, like, can you be his first villain? So they shot the fight with the Sheik first. So that kind of set all the precedent for like how the fights are going to be shot and how it needs to be. So he's on screen and off screen, pulling so much weight. Great MVP.
Agreed,
okay,
man.
So, okay, any more thoughts before I wind it all down?
Yeah, one more thing to kind of just add on to what you were saying, man. Like, I think the reason why your John Wicks, your Iron Claws are so good is because like they understand the genre. They have an appreciation for the choreography, and they have an appreciation for the art itself. Like, people forget, like, action it's art, and that's why, like, John Wick is so good. That's why your Iron Claw is so good, is because they take these things so seriously. And they're a really big, crucial part of the story. And I think I feel like the Oscars, they definitely don't recognize action or just like choreography, stuff like that. That's something that should be recognized from the Academy, and I feel like that's a category that they should add for sure.
Preaching to the choir. I can't. They're supposed to be doing it soon. Hopefully they do, because I like some of that work. When it came to John Wick, so usually a movie will have one stunt coordinator. They had 3 different stunt coordinators on John Wick, where they're like, okay, you're gonna deal with these fights, you're gonna deal with these fights, and then the last person's gonna deal with these fights. So everyone is working working around the clock
And
to get that stuff done. And like you said, it doesn't get enough credit.
the director, what's that guy's name? The director, he's a stunt choreographer. He started out as a stunt choreographer. Chad Stahelski started out on The Crow. Like that was his first role. He was a stunt double for Bruce Lee's son. So like you kind of see it like Brandon Lee started out that reputation started out very young, and then he kind of just got into film. So like you have to appreciate it, man. You appreciate the art of it, and that's why action films are becoming a lot more complicated, a lot better, and I feel like it's really good for the art of it, man.
And see, that's the thing. I hope that this movie is a reminder to people, like to people in Hollywood. Most movies that are great like this, they get seen by the right people, and then they're like, oh yeah, we need to take these lessons. And this movie is a reminder that you can do this work. You can do it on a budget, and it can look fantastic. But all that being said, if you don't have that story there, it ain't worth jack. You have to have that story there too. It's a marriage of both.
The messaging is key. I mean, without the messaging, like it's not worth the watching.
I'm like, like action movies are like my favorite movies. And when it comes to like wrestling itself, Will was talking about it before. I think that Hollywood, I think there's a lot of, certain people, you know what I'm talking about when I say it, Justin, but like a hoity-toity people who are like, oh yeah, like Broadway and, these higher echelon places, quote unquote, where they're kind of removed from art. They're not day-to-day live people. Like they're like day-to-day, like a regular working person is not going to relate to that stuff. Tarantino calls movies like working man's art, and wrestling is that art also. Like I can go home, it's Monday night, I'm gonna watch Raw and I'm gonna go to sleep. Like that's what it is. And I'm invested within these characters, within this art, and what these people are doing is not, it's not different than what Leonardo DiCaprio's doing, or if what Denzel is doing on the stage in Broadway. It's nothing different than that, and it should be just as well respected. That's my take on it.
Damn. I mean, you said it best.
I don't know. See, that's the thing. Like, I have these thoughts, and I have a lot of love for what people do, and it's like I feel like it's hard to go and dismiss somebody's artwork, right? And that means that it could be this, it could be them, playing on the field, it could be anything. Whatever you're trying to take the time to do and put, your work ethic towards, it should be held with value and be respected by your fellow humans on Earth. Sorry for getting so deep. Okay. So I assume both y'all like sports movies. Where does Iron Claw end up on the sports movie, rankings for y'all? Is this something where it's like it's instant classic, or is there
cream of
what's
the
the
crops?
perspective?
One of the best. I mean, I can't name a film that's as beautiful as this, but also, there's no sports film that I can name that has a director like this choreography, stunt direction, or all that stuff. Like this kind of is changing that direction, man. Like in terms of like sports films, like I can only name a handful.
I can mention
Moneyball's a good one.
Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans, a good one.
And then I'd argue like Creed and stuff like that. I'd add
because Creed, Rocky, those are films that really get into, really focus on just like the cinematography and it like upper scale cinema. But a lot of these sports films, like they don't really touch on stuff like this, man. So it's like it's a deeper level, man. Like you have to appreciate it.
Where does it go for you?
I mean, it's up there. It's a great movie. Obviously, I'm a big sports guy. I mean, sports. I do things with sports for a living. I mean, in my career. Remember the Titans is my that's right. Remember the Titans is my all-time favorite movie for sports. All-time favorite sports movie. And then you got the good ones like Rudy, Space Jam.
Forgot about Rudy.
Let's see. I mean, there's so many good ones. Moneyball you mentioned earlier, The Sandlot,
Invincible.
Oh, Invincible, great one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, who's in that movie? Mark Wahlberg. There you go.
Yeah, Mark
great
Wahlberg.
actor. Love Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
One movie that would, I mean, it's kind of, well, it's not similar, but it's. Have you all seen Warrior with Tom Hardy? UFC movie.
I think so. Is that the UFC one? Yeah. Where he's like a teacher. Yeah.
Shout out Kurt Angle's in that movie. Shout out Kurt Angle. One of my favorites.
No way.
Time. Yes, he is. So I mean, this is one of the best sports movies. And there's not like
movies.
There's not a wrestling movie like I could think of that's as good as this. Like, I mean, you had The Wrestler. What was that? 2006, 2008, something like that. It's not
Yeah,
as good as this. And then you have you have the movie Legendary
no.
by WWE Productions, and John Cena is in that movie. It deals with him and his brother, and he teaches them wrestling. Like, it's high school wrestling. It's not like WWE wrestling, which it was a feel good story movie. But I mean, was it great? No. I mean, the reason why I watched it is because John Cena wasn't. But this was a great
Yeah,
sports movie. In general, and then I would
that's a
say
good one.
top 5, top 3
5,
movie of the
5,
year.
dog. For sure, yeah, it's my top 3. It might be
Oh
my
yeah.
number 1
Oh yeah.
actually, if not 1.
I think I have a lot of like 5-star, like a 10 out of 10 movies this year. Like, I already talked about them, like Past Lives, John Wick, and a couple other ones. But this is definitely in that range of like fantastic movies this year that I'm gonna come back to. And there's something just beautiful about this movie. Will, you're talking about Warrior. So is that one of your companion movies?
That's what I was going to talk about. Yeah, I would say that, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody that has not seen it. I do like Tom Hardy. Great in this movie. I like him in Batman. I was actually watching Batman earlier. Very, very good movie. I'd like him as an actor.
Nice.
Very good actor.
Mr. Wayne.
So yeah, that is my companion for this. But also, I want to say as well with this, it's not a companion movie, but the documentaries like The Dark Side of the Ring, definitely watch that. And also yeah,
It's on Vice. It's from Vice. It's on YouTube. Anybody can watch it. It's 40
it's
minutes.
so good.
It'll go
And
by
then also
so
you
fast.
got. I'm a wrestling fan, so I love watching those type of documentaries on the A&E station. WWE Legends. They talk about different things, different wrestlers and stuff. Like, it's really interesting. So if you like wrestling, like biographies and stuff like that, I would definitely check those out.
Awesome. Justin, did you have any companion movies for this one?
I was gonna say Fight Club, man. Just the themes of masculinity. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, it kind of deals with some of the
Ooh.
same topics. So I
That's
feel like
that's a very interesting companion movie. The movie that came to mind for me was Hereditary, which is a horror movie. Which this is kind of a horror movie to me, but it's the same thing where it's like it's a family movie, it's a family family drama movie, and there's a lot of juice behind that. I think Iron Claw has much more like physical juice, but Hereditary has the same familial elements, I think, in some senses. But I would the one I actually do want to have as a companion movie. Have either one of y'all seen Foxcatcher from I think 2014? It's Channing Tatum, Mark Ruffalo, Steve Carell, and it's kind of one of these drama movies about a real life situation that happened. And Channing Tatum, best performance
underrated.
to date. And the wrestling, you will feel like the emotions you feel within that. I think if you've played any sports or anything like that, the intensity of that movie is just something else. It's just like this movie. If you want that sauce that Iron Claw has, check out Warrior, check out Foxcatcher. I feel like you could say, you said Fight Club, same thing. There's so many, I wouldn't say so many, but there's like a certain peak of movies where you can capture this sort of emotion and it barely happens. And Iron Claw just added to a great line of movies that have no connection to some extent and all the connection, because it's like a human connection that you get from these movies.
Yeah, it's legit, man. It's real.
I do have something to close us out on. Do you have any other thoughts or anything like
Go
that?
see it. See it once, see it twice. I mean, I hope it picks up, man, because we need more movies like this. A24, man, changing the game. They're really one of the few studios that's really doing something different. I think Neon's also doing something different too. But a movie like this deserves respect and admiration. So I definitely feel like people should see it.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to MJF for being an extra in this movie. He played he was a fake Von Erich. Okay. If you know the story, it explains it in the Vice documentary, but you see him for like 5 seconds, and, it was pretty cool to see the world heavyweight champion, AEW world champion in that movie. So I definitely want to give him a shout out. Awesome wrestler, awesome on the mic too.
Oh yeah. Okay. One of the things, so from the documentary and just from the movie itself, one of the things that I really took to heart was the resilience of the human spirit, especially if you have the right people around you. And Kevin in real life, he says it in the documentary, he says it to, on the red carpet, he says, don't feel bad for me. Like I've got, 12, 13 grandkids, like my life is good. And it's for someone to go through as much as he did in his real life, whether it's, with his brothers, with his father, And the resilience of the human spirit there's no limit to it. There's so much bad stuff going on in this world. And I think that we all have to be open, and we should all have hope that we can all bounce back, and there's going to be a better day coming. And it should never be that, you feel the need to end your life or anything like that. So this movie kind of, they touch on it extremely well. And in real life, the real Kevin, he's doing well. Then it's like, if he's gone through that much, how much bad stuff can we go through? I think we
gotta
can all
persevere,
survive it.
man.
And besides that, the messages of sportsmanship, the tenacity you need in your life to live, the brotherhood, the family that you should have, the things that should bring joy to your life, they should be special and they should be intimate to you. And you should never let anybody steal that away from you. You should always treasure that, because you never know when it's going to go away, and that means in any way, any person in your life, love harder, be better, do everything better. This movie is that message. It's just like, it gets me hyped, I'm gonna put the iron claw on my life.
I'm about to hit the ring right now.
This.
Shoot, got me pumped up.
Will, Justin, it's been a fantastic conversation with both y'all. I'm glad that y'all have done this. I hope to have both of you back on the pod soon enough. I hope everybody's doing well. Stay blessed, stay happy, and go see Iron Claw. Please, for the love of God, go see this movie wherever it is, whenever you're listening to this. Put up the Iron Claw.
Yeah, deuces, you guys. Really appreciate you inviting me, man. Thankful for it. Yeah.
Justin, where can they find you online?
Find me on Instagram, Just Huge, JustHugee. So you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, pretty much everything, same handle.
And Justin has fantastic videos, no matter what's it about. Justin's always popping off. I love it. I love the perspective, and I'm just like, that's my dude right there. Will.
Hey, appreciate you having me, Vikash. Awesome time. I did enjoy it a lot, and I hope to be back on soon. All right. But yeah, I appreciate you all having me. And it's nice to meet you, Justin, too.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Will.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cinema Pursuit. Cinema Pursuit is produced by Katie Nadell, Zach Nadell, and Vikash Patel. Special thanks to Cole Cooper for the intro and outro music. You can listen to Cinema Pursuit on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you may listen to podcasts. Follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Cinema Pursuit Podcast, Twitter or X at Cin Pursuit Pod, and check out our subreddit, r/Cinema Pursuit.